We're so happy to have Jamie here today. She is joining us from San Diego, California. And her presentation today is all about burnout, tenacity, and self reflection. And in Jamie's bio, she talks about how she spends a lot of time thinking about librarianship as a profession and the people that comprise it. And so I'm really excited to hear what she has to say today. So Jamie, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. Hi, everyone. Okay, I need to close the chat. It's going to be distracting to me. Oh, wow. So thank you all for joining me today on this Friday afternoon after a long work week. I really appreciate the time and energy of you choosing to be here with me and with us. I think, we have many choices for how we could spend our Friday afternoons, including spending it in bed. And so thank you for being here. And if you're in bed too, that's great. My goal is to keep you entertained enough that you stay awake. So today we are here to talk a bit about burnout, tenacity, and self-reflection. And maybe the intro music gave you a hint, or maybe you've also noticed that the letters that I start with in my title are BT and S. So yes, BTS will feature in this presentation, the reason being that they bring me much joy. And I think that these days we need as much joy in our life as possible. And I encourage you to find whatever makes you joyful and bring it into as many areas of your life as possible. So first, I do want to start with a land acknowledgement. What do you guys all think of land acknowledgements? We've been doing it for a couple of years now. They start off meetings and webinars, and I've heard a lot of different things about them. But for me, I find that, they tell history that you won't learn about anywhere else unless you purposely seek it out. And so, of course, that tells me then to question, well, what is it that I've been taught or not taught? What is this narrative that is our understood history? And what is the unknown and untold history of this land? So where I live in San Diego, it was the land of the Kumeyaay Nation for 12,000 years. The Kumeyaay were a migratory population. They moved from the coast to the mountains, depending on the season. As far north to what is now North County, San Diego, and into Mexico. And if you see that black line bisecting the image, that's the border of California and Mexico. So when that border, was established, it effectively cut this territory of the Kumeyaay Nation in two. So they were disenfranchised by both the Mexican and the US governments, further decimated by disease, smallpox, malaria. There are still members of the Kumeyaay Nation today, but a very small remnant. So for me, it's really important to know this information of where we come from, to know where we're going, and not just our personal family and ancestral histories, but human history as a species who live on this land, and this land that supports us and nourishes us. So our country's experience of this land is just one very small chapter of a much larger story of this ecosystem. So let's get on to burnout. And burnout, up until a couple of years ago, was really understood in the context of work. And it was really, it seemed to manifest mainly in two ways. One, that you would feel that you were just working harder and doing more, but without getting anywhere. And so, just continually working harder, never succeeding, never accomplishing anything. And that sustained effort starting to really affect your personal, emotional life and how you thought about yourself and how you thought about work. Another way is the emotional exhaustion of a bunch of different stressors affecting your motivation, your ability to do things, your outlook, and really a sense of hopelessness. And, I realized about a year ago that I was really in burnout. I was experiencing it. And so this topic really comes out of me wanting to do something to understand it better for myself and do something about it. So I do want to say that you may not agree with everything that I say. This really comes from my experience, and Also, I have no intention of making anyone feel bad or guilty in this talk. If I do so, I do apologize for any harm that I may cause to you. Um, okay, so in the context of libraries, last year, January 2021, which feels like forever ago, Library Work Life newsletter had this importance of self-care. And as you can see, this, lovely, beautiful salad. So this implication of like, hey, we're going through a lot. So let's eat really healthy. Let's exercise. Let's take care of ourselves and we'll be fine. Fast forward a year later, January 2022, and it's all, okay, what's going on, right? They call it pandemic fatigue, and they describe it as an exhaustion you may be feeling after months of spending so much time and energy dealing with that quote unquote new normal. And it's not just libraries that are talking about it. As I was looking into this and doing research, I was finding articles everywhere. A recent article from the New York Times talking about, your body is telling you that something is wrong. We are undergoing what's this manifestation of chronic unmitigated stress. And our bodies are not meant, I'm sure you've heard this before, we're not meant to have prolonged stress for years on end. And it really does take this physical toll, this emotional toll. So if you are feeling that you are just completely frozen, that you are unable to really think about or move or comprehend anything, do anything while the world seems to just explode, implode around you, this is a feeling that so many people are feeling right now, that is for sure. And, people will say, well, it was all brought on by the pandemic. And I would say, the pandemic really showed us what was rotten under the surface of our society already. Clearly, we immediately saw systemic inequities in the sense of who could stay home and work remotely and who had to go in to work and risk their lives. And very often it was also these same people were the most vulnerable populations in terms of the kind of healthcare that they had, the kind of social economic structures or safety nets that they had. So including there then, when remote schooling and everything went on, like who has the technology to continue schooling? What school districts have the technology to continue offering school? It was really clear right away that there was something going on larger than what the pandemic was already bringing to us. So as we all know about alternative facts and truth and reality, like it's the end of truth and reality, right? Everyone's got their own idea of truth and reality. And what kind of society can you have when everybody thinks that they're an expert and their opinion is the thing that they're going to follow? Similarly, nationalism and xenophobia, not just in the US, but everywhere in the world. And then, of course, realizing that other people want to kill you, either passively through their disregard for the measures that were being put in place for COVID, or actively. Last month, Michelle Go, a 40-year-old Asian American woman, was just walking, minding her own business, and somebody just pushed her in front of a subway train. And this sort of feeling that our society is really going through I don't even know, something's really wrong. Like I think we're all feeling something's really wrong, and all of this is added onto all of the other burnout sort of contributions too. And it's even bigger than the pandemic. So the planet is in crisis. For my generation, Gen X, and probably older, the boomer generations, those of you who are boomers, we've kind of felt like this wasn't going to affect us so much, right? That there would be time to deal with it, that we would be able to figure out a solution. And now it's impossible to ignore what's really happening quicker. Climate scientists have said, yeah, faster than even our most, advanced predictions. Wildfires in California have always been around. They've been seasonal. At this point, they can happen at any month, at any time, and they're larger and more destructive than before. I know for those of you in Kentucky, recently you had a really bad tornado. And tornadoes are not unheard of in Kentucky, but when it happened, and the size of it. So these are just examples of clearly our planet's also telling us that something's going wrong. So even if we wanted to go back to pre-pandemic life, and some of our leaders, want to take us back way further, decades further, back to when things were good for them. Even if you wanted to go back, it's impossible. You can't. We don't live in the same environment, physically, socially, culturally. So then what is the way forward? Oops, sorry, let me go back one. There we go. What is the way forward? There is a climate scientist named Alex Stefan who coined the term discontinuity, this idea there is no way of predicting what's going to happen. There's no logical narrative anymore. This follows this, follows this. And I know that the moving images on the screen are kind of distracting right now, but they're really meant to illustrate that nothing makes logical sense anymore. It's very confusing. Every day is confusing, and it's very destabilizing. And it really causes a sort of mental panic and depression in everybody right now. In addition to planetary climate crises, we have the political situations. Just last year, we were sure that we were on the brink of a civil war in the US. The recent military aggression from Russia towards the Ukraine has us all wondering what's going to happen next. Nuclear war, I mentioned just today, there was something about a nuclear station being hit. So we know that our future is made up of more pandemics and more humanitarian crises. So what do you do, right? It's like this frozen hopelessness. It's apathy, but it's only apathy because you have no idea what to do. And so this is the burnout that we are all collectively facing right now. And I like to think of it as a cultural and ideological struggle. And of course, this is again from what I'm experiencing. And obviously, I think every generation has had, people talking about different possibilities and everything. But this whole idea of past and present, our entire recorded, understood past as we know it from a Western civilization, the whole recorded past has been this structure of supremacy, not just white supremacy, gender supremacy, economic supremacy, geographic supremacy, this idea of social hierarchy. We really esteem and prize the individual. We live in a competition model, so we know that there are going to be winners and losers, and we want to be the winners. We want to be as far on that spectrum of winning as we possibly can. There's going to be rich people, there's going to be poor people. We want to be, we are looking to try and be individually on that safer end of the scale. So we are also working with that scarcity model that there isn't enough for everyone, and so it has to be this way. Similarly, the militarism and the dominance, forced dominance. And this is what we've lived in for so long that for some people, it's impossible to even think that it could be different. Like, how would you even begin to have it different? This is just human nature. This is the way we are. But again, every generation has its dreamers, and we all have enough imagination to try and think about, well, what would it look like, if things were different, if we were working more as a collective, if we were sharing our resources, if we were working together around our climate, trying to mitigate the worst of what we know is coming, prioritizing it. It's kind of like if you have a really dirty house, you can't do much, and it really affects the way you function. So it's like maybe we can clean up our house together. So this is what I'm seeing in my experience. I feel like more so than ever in my life, I'm feeling that there's this this pressure now, this like, let's think about what things could be different. And I think that the pandemic really did start us thinking about it, but also really like just seeing that our world is also hurting so much has brought this to the forefront. So how do you survive? How do you get through every day, right? Living within an existing system, which is clearly sick. How do we get through every day and think about how to change it? How do we pick up ourselves every day, and how do we persevere? And this is where self-care comes into this whole story. And the way that I like to think of self-care is in 3 different ways. And the first is self-soothing. And self-soothing is not necessarily healthy or good for you, but it's just stuff that makes you feel better in the moment. So, eating something that makes you happy, even though it's not really good for you. One of the things I've been doing for the last couple of years is reading science fiction novels. And so it's a really lovely escapist activity to, imagine possible futures and sort of escape from reality that way. For those people, so I know some of you here are also BTS fans. Like for our BTS fans, it's watching hours and hours and hours of BTS videos because they laugh and they make us feel happy and joyful. So these are all good self-soothing activities that help us deal, right, with the immediate, all the negative things that are coming from every other side. Another thing is that just idea of self-care, and with this, I probably should have come up with a better title than self-care, but I couldn't think of another thing to call it. This is the idea of eating right, getting enough sleep, doing exercise and yoga and meditation and whatnot. And I actually think that this is the hardest part of self-care to do because it assumes that we prioritize ourselves. It assumes that we care about ourselves enough, that we're going to treat ourselves well. And psychologically, like we can understand it. Intellectually, we can understand the importance of it, but emotionally, the relationship that many of us have with ourselves, it makes it extremely hard to actually do this kind of self-care. So then the third thing, which I think is really the most important and which we don't really talk about or think about in the context of self-care because it's really about others. And this is the feeling you get when you connect with and help others. And it's the most important, I think. Obviously, all three of them tie in together and sort of reflect and build off of each other. But, there are three easy ways to connect with and help others: money, time, and attention. And so, and also on a large scale and on a small scale. So some of the larger things are, just getting involved with crowdfunding and donating to different causes wherever you can. You may actually find, though, that you get more out of an individual one-to-one sort of help of giving money-wise. And so for instance, there's a college group of mine as a Facebook group that's just for helping. So people can request for help and people can give help and they tell, why they needed a story or whatever. And you choose, do you want to give or do you not want to? And I found that one, it's been really eye-opening to hear the stories of people of what they're going through. And it feels really good to know, hey, I can help and I'm going to, and I did. So it's short term, but at least for the next couple of weeks, I know they're going to be okay. And then they feel the love too from their community of like, you're not alone in this. And now, not everybody has money to give, but you do have time and attention to give. And so in our profession, for instance, for those of you who are, mid-career and advanced career professionals, I really recommend that you connect with some of the younger generations, that you offer yourself as a mentor, and really, like take it upon yourself to support somebody as they're coming into this career. I think with your friends and family and people who you want to stay in contact with, make that effort to reach out, call them, schedule a Zoom call. For introverts, I think it's always challenging to be the one to sort of reach out and do that. And but it is, like just talking with somebody for 20 minutes or so will leave you both feeling happier and more connected and more grounded. And then, volunteering, of course, volunteering in your community, volunteering with your association, volunteering, with your school or with your church or whatever, just being actively involved and engaged with others is going to do so much for yourself, which then gives you sort of like a stability and a space for you to work on for that self-care of, I need to get some sleep, I need to eat well, and evaluating your self-soothing behaviors too, like, oh, this is good, is this good for me, that sort of thing. So one of the self-soothing behaviors that I really enjoy are phone games, and this is wordscapes. So during the pandemic, I think this is when I started playing it, of course, and I first started playing wordscapes as an individual. every weekend, starting today, there are tournaments, and I would play the tournament, and I, wouldn't win most days. And last year, I decided, hey, you know what? What is this whole team part of the game? So I formed a team. I formed a team with some people that I knew. It was very specific. It was Wellesley librarians. It was my alma mater, and then librarians. And there were only 3 of us. So then we invited other Wellesley alumni, and then it was open too. So the whole time, random people were, asking to join the team. And then it spread to our friends and our family. And so now what we've got is this amazing chat. If you can look at it, it's like people are really playful and fun and like make up these puns and jokes using the words that we're playing with. And for those of you who do play the game, if you notice how many, like I have a ton of coins right there. It says 33,000 coins. That's a lot of coins. That is because my team wins. We strategize. We start at a certain time. We work together. We constantly win, and we are supporting ourselves, and this has changed completely the way that I played this game, and it's become much more important in my life, even though it is a self-soothing activity, right? It's not important in the sense of I have to do this, or you know what I mean, but it's like it's something I really look forward to because it's a group activity. So how many of you guys play Wordle, the hottest word game to hit the internet this year? And if you don't play it, you've at least seen the social media, these little colored boxes. These colored boxes tell me nothing except like, hey, cool, look, I do know something you don't know. And so I do love the game. It's fun, it's like a mastermind for word games. But what happened was that I started sharing my answers with just a couple of people. And for those of you who do play, probably you have this similar experience where you start to share your answers and you start to talk with people about, like, oh, wow, that's a really interesting word. But then it expands from there. And it's like, oh, hey, there's a snowstorm coming into Boston. Here's a picture of what it looks like right now, or here's a picture of what my dog did. Look how cute they are. I have it's only 2 people who I do this with every day. We share our answers with each other and talk about other things. But what's beautiful about this particular 2 people and I is that I haven't talked to them for 25 years. Like we were friends in college. I have no idea, like, I missed 25 years of their life. And now I'm starting to learn a little bit more just through this. So these are 2, very small examples of what I call pods of support. And this is not a phrase that I coined. I actually first heard about it in the framework of restorative justice work. So in that framework, a pod of support would be, some harm has been caused to me and I need to talk it over and understand it and process it and heal from it. Who are the people that I go to who will do that? So a very small group, under 5 people generally. And so people that that you can trust, who understand you, who are going to understand where you're coming from too, and who can offer you that support. However, another pot of support in the same restorative justice framework is, oh no, I caused harm to somebody and I'm grappling with what that's doing to me and how I'm feeling about it. And also, like they kind of deserved it, but not really, like all of that. Who can I talk to who's not going to judge me about it, who's going to hold me and support me, who's going to offer some really great, insight. And so that's where it comes from. But it's this idea of very small groups where you prioritize the relationships, where you have this level of trust. It can be online or in real life. Actually, ever since the pandemic, my in real life person life has shrunk hugely. I mean, it's just a tiny fraction of what it was. But my online relationships and networks have just like bloomed exponentially. I have so many different pods for all sorts of topics. Obviously, I have my BTS pod who, send me text and images and everything. And I have a meditation sort of crowd pod and several within the library world, my college group and stuff like that. And so the point of pods is not to keep your life separate, not to keep everything separate, but to be so well resourced and so well supported from all different areas of your life that you feel that you are always connected and you feel that you have that stable ground, solid footing underneath you. Okay, so connecting with and helping with others. So let's bring this back to BTS, of course. And you cannot talk about BTS actually if you do not also talk about ARMY, which is their fandom. And I realize that maybe not all of you know very much about BTS, except that they're a band, a musical group who's very popular right now, a South Korean, musical group, which is the largest musical group in the world right now and for the foreseeable future. And the fandom is huge as well. There's no way of really saying how many people there are, but I have seen estimates of 50 million to over 100 million people globally. And if you haven't heard about that yet too, you might wonder why, just because we live in an English speaking world that's very protective of its own sort of culture, and so there's that going on as well. But anyway, trying to understand why it's so popular. And my mom, at the end of last year, I was talking about BTS and she said, Jamie, I really don't understand this sort of like obsession that you have with this group. It's so unlike you. You are not the type of person to be really into pop culture, and boy bands and like I don't get it. Can you explain it to me? And she's so right. She knows me very well in some ways. And I'm not. I was just talking, with James before this started. He was mentioning a movie, and I was like, I'm sorry, I have no idea. The last new music I listened to was really like in the year 2000. And actually this is really telling, because it's also this idea of like, as you get older, things start to shrink for you. You stop paying attention to what's happening, continually happening, and you sort of like live in the memories of like what you have experienced and feel safe with. But we'll get back to that. So BTS, and I just wanted to sort of share that to me, BTS really is the best and largest example in the world today of the collective. And so by the collective, I mean collective action, collective healing, and collective joy, all things of which are very needed in this world. And so I felt like, so through this energy, people are seeing, as they learn more about BTS and get sucked into the rabbit hole, they're seeing this possible future, and it's a very different social and cultural movement from what is established right now that we have. So I'm going to play a short clip from a docuseries which was created by a fan, just to give you a sense of the sentiment, the emotion underneath all of this. And so again, these whole like fan created material, this docuseries was created by a fan piecing together different things. This is another side of the collective joy and collective action.
Time we met, we spoke about UNICEF,
Yes.
giving back, but it's not only you that are giving back. Your fans, the army, have been inspired by you to give back.
First, it starts off thinking, what do the boys love? And what are the things we can do in the name of BTS or ARMY?
BTS recently had to cancel a tour. BTS Army started to donate the ticket refunds to the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and they have now raised over $330,000.
The BTS Army matches $1 million in Black Lives Matter donations.
Part of me was like, why isn't everyone's fans doing this? Can you imagine if everyone's fans thanked them by organizing charity in their name?
For ARMY, these simple acts of kindness bring them closer to BTS and to each other.
We want to make them proud. We really do.
And it's all in Korean, right? Yeah. Okay.
You learn it. Translate.
BTS has completely changed our lives.
Yes. They give so much to us. They help empower us so much.
And they teach me how to love myself, and I'm gonna cry, I'm sorry.
All right, so it's more, right? It's more than a pop music group, a boy band idol group. You can feel that energy and that joy and that action just from that short clip. And so talking specifically about collective action, it did mention that Black Lives Matter donation. So BTS and their company donated $1 million to the BLM movement in 2020. And then ARMY, the fandom, said, hey, we can match this, let's do it. They matched $1 million in 24 hours, right? That's amazing. But this was not the beginning of this kind of giving. So the first formal efforts that BTS launched was through UNICEF, and it was one about It was the Love Myself campaign to end violence towards children and young people, like the violence that they do to themselves, the violence that they experience from others, and just in the world. And so this was such a huge and successful campaign, which they promoted for several years, and they, created albums around it, and they had a lot of heartfelt interviews and videos about it. So if you see in the lower left-hand corner, this One in an Army charity project was started by a 16-year-old. It is now not the only one for sure, but sort of like the largest and one that people look at to see what are we doing next. And they organize, she has about, I think, 30 people who work with her. They organize charities every month in BTS's name. And I actually just an hour ago before this talk, I scrolled to Twitter and I went to that site. So if you actually go to their Twitter page, you'll find their two most recent projects. And one is something specific for the Ukraine that, they've been working on for a while, because knowing that there's such a large force behind all of this, they're very careful to vet who these sort of places that they're donating to are, like something that's easy for everyone globally to donate to, and something that everyone can get behind. And so they've created what's called a crisis card for Ukraine, listing a whole bunch of resources for what you can do and where you can donate. So this is just an example of, some collective action that BTS Army does. Regarding collective healing, so we all know the term doom scrolling, right? And so this is also, I imagine doom scrolling as this also just frozen horror of, looking through your Twitter feed of, atrocity after atrocity. And I've never really been a Twitter user until I started following BTS. This is what my feed looks like pretty much all the time. And I didn't, this did not take me long to find these. It's just like scroll, screenshot. Okay, this is like one day. And if you'll find, like the one in the right-hand corner says, I'm 60, but BTS makes me think like I'm aging backwards. And I want to talk a little bit about that whole idea. What I said before is, as we get older, we sort of, hang on to what we know and what we're comfortable with. And we think of young people as those people, like, we don't really understand them. We're gonna we have this like generational disparaging, group, what we're gonna say about them. We don't really pay attention to them. But this idea of like, the more you can stay connected to what's going on and being part of this larger, generational conversation, there's a lot of energy there. And a lot to learn from our younger generations. So other things, on this, if you're having trouble reading it, just somebody saying that their therapist has never seen them so happy, somebody saying that they were in complete burnout, but now they're starting to re-engage, somebody thanking the fandom is just so supportive, and then somebody just saying, hi, I hope you're having a great day. So that is definitely, what I now check Twitter several times a day just for a little boost of, happiness and connection. So I'm going to show you a short video clip that brings me a lot of joy. Yeah. Okay. So here are some things I love about this. 3 of them are dancing barefoot. Okay. Then you can hear that, you can hear the other musicians and dancers in the background sort of yelling out to keep the time, right? And keep that energy. And there's just so much, they love what they're doing, and there's just so much joy in it as they're practicing. And it's just, they're just practicing, and this isn't a formal performance or anything, just so much genuine joy. And so on the note of collective joy, BTS really inspires everyone to sort of rethink what brings them joy and create things. And so this, I thought you guys would really appreciate this. This is one fan's graphic rendition of all their songs grouped by genre and topic. It's lovely, right? And And what's really cool is they all link to actual videos of the song, so you can go and listen to them for yourself. Another one that I really like is Artan which is a play on their name, Bangtan. And so this is somebody who is really into art and very knowledgeable about art. And she'll take what they post, a photo that they'll post on social media, and then find a piece of artwork to compare it to. Also, RM, who's the person pictured on the bicycle, he really loves contemporary art. So he will be posting images from museums. And so then this person will then post those images with the artist name, with the date that it was created, and with a story of like what it means in that context. And so again, my Twitter feed is very educational and it's very fun. And all of this is inspired by this joy and connection and collectivity. Another example is Bangtan Library. I've asked around and nobody knows who they are. And they do say they're librarians, so we'll take them at their word. But they post these informative educational threads about NFTs and cryptocurrency. Like, what is it? Metaverse, using examples from BTS videos in it. And they'll say, the bottom says a fun and educational resource for big hit nerds and intellectuals. And it's very nerdy and it's lovely. I love it. And also Bangtan Academy. So this is a group of people who decided, hey, let's start a Korean, language sort of school. And it has become a formal program that you apply to get into. And there are multiple cohorts. Again, this collective of working together to create it, but then working together to learn about it and using BTS as the actual examples as you learn the language. So these are just 3 examples of how joy manifests in this collective. And of course, let's not forget the collective joy of a BTS concert.
하나, 둘, 셋, 헐. 오. 와. 예. 와우. BTS ARMY. 야, 너무 아름답네요. 보여요 지금? 반짝반짝. 와, 진짜 이쁘다. 짠.
Okay, and so the lights that are making up that flashing signal are all made up of individual lights that concert goers have. When you go to a concert, you have this army bomb. It's a light and it's connected to Bluetooth. So they were able to program, patterns into it. So that message, BTS Heart Army, is made up of thousands of people just sitting in the audience waving their lights. And it doesn't have to be about BTS. BTS is just my example. BTS is a very easy, large example. My son is 11 years old and he's really into playing video games, and he watches video YouTubers, right, which is a career that's also a very new career. And he loves this guy named Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is a 23-year-old and organizes these large sort of crowdfunding events. So my son came to me at the end of last year and he said, Mom, I really want to donate some money to help clean up trash in the ocean. Is that okay? And I said, well, yeah, that sounds great. Like, where did you hear about this? How are you involved in this? And he said, oh, it's Mr. Beast. So I was a little skeptical, and, we did some research. We looked at it. We looked into like how the money was being distributed and sort of, I showed him, like, let's sort of evaluate and make sure that Mr. Beast isn't just taking all this money for himself. But if you'll see on the Wikipedia page, this isn't his first, large collective effort. The first one raised $23 million, and it was for the Arbor Day Foundation, planting trees. This one, we added our small contribution to the $30 million that was donated to this campaign. So when you think about this, like, you've never heard of Mr. Beast, I'll probably say most of you haven't, right? This isn't being targeted to a generation of adults. This is being targeted to children and to young people. And this is, really this generation of young people who have grown up in this online global environment where the things that they care about are very different from the things us old folks care about, like nationality is like not a big deal at all. Like this whole idea, like, remember how obsessed like our generation, Gen X boomers are with like gender identity and sexuality and all that stuff. This generation is like, whatever, who cares? Like there's other things to care about. So this idea, so he's 23 years old. The members of BTS are, they were born in 91 to 96, so they're all in their 20s. The woman who started one in an army was 16 at the time, so she's now 20. This is the generation, this generation has so much energy and so much movement forward already. And it's like the older generations, I think we really need to pay attention to it. And especially for Gen X, as we, really come into our political and economic power, to not be like the old dudes that we know who are really trying to, bring us back to when they remembered America was great. But to get out of the way of these younger people and let them do their thing, and support them. We don't need to fully understand it. We don't need to fully agree with it. It's just, but let's not block it. Let's at least, say, do your thing. This is your world, that you're inheriting. Like, go for it and find out how to support them as best as you can. So this leads then to just the self-reflection chapter of who are we? How do we fit into all of this? What is the meaning of life? All that, And again, 2 more beautiful pieces of fan art inspired by somebody who loves BTS, and each of these reflects one of their songs. So I'm going to take you back a little bit to when I was first talking about the pandemic and really thinking about the emotions underneath this. Let's think about the emotions underneath this of when we were in the midst of the pandemic and everything that we were feeling, right? And I think we can all agree that fear was a huge central emotion, a fear of everything, the unknown, of illness, of how it's spreading, like just loss of control, there's no information, really that sense of fear. And and fear is being used as a weapon now with people who are really denying the pandemic. This idea of like, well, you choose to live in fear. I choose not to live in fear, right? That's really not true. What they're choosing to do is be in denial of fear. And that doesn't mean that there isn't any fear. So this denial is really, really strong. And we see it everywhere, denying that there are systemic problems, denying their culpability in it just by nature of the privilege that they have in it. So denial is really quite a strong, powerful blockage to understanding this, are the emotions that are informing us, are telling us some very important things. So if we're going to actually look at fear, let's look at fear for a minute, and try and go deeper. So underneath this fear, like, why this fear? Why are we feeling this fear? And it's probably grief. I think this idea of so many people who are suffering, who have died, who are sick, grief for the loss of what we thought our lives was going to look like, the continuity of our lives, grief for just all of the suffering that's happening right now, and the sense, fear and grief, it's like, what can you do about it? Anyway, so grief is definitely underneath the fear. And then if we want to go a little bit further than that, underneath the grief is care. So all of these things, we don't feel, you don't feel fear and grief if you don't care about, very deeply about the people you love, about your communities, about our species, and about this world. And so I actually did, I was listening to a podcast recently on the 10% Happier podcast, and they were interviewing Tara Brach, who is a well-known insight meditation teacher, which is my, the kind of practice that I do. She's also a really well-known author. And she was the one who, she was the one who actually identified these 3 emotions, fear, grief, and care. And she talks about this gold in the center of everyone. She has a new book out. I can't remember what it's called, but it's something about gold in the center of you. And she says, underneath everything, we have this gold, but we also have all these layers that cover it, to protect us from this very harsh world that we live in. And sometimes we forget, we start to associate who we are with these layers, with this armor that protects us. And if we can continue to look within ourselves deeper and deeper to get to the point where we find this gold core of who we are, that then helps. Does that help? I feel like that helped me. It helps reframe all of the things that we're feeling, from what's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? And I can't do anything to, wow, you know, I'm feeling this way because there's so much going on and because I care. And coming from that root of strength is really helpful for me anyway. So then this cultural and ideological shift, I'm now calling it, instead of a struggle, for a shift, you know, in World War II, we had this keep calm and carry on, just keep doing what you're doing and things are going to be okay, right? But we know that the system is broken, that it's not working, it's no longer working, and realizing that it actually didn't work for a lot of people for a lot longer. So we need a new slogan now. Keep calm and carry on is not going to cut it. So I was thinking, I came up with keep calm and be the light. So be a light, be the light, be your light, be some sort of light. And I wanted a BTS song to play in the background, but I couldn't decide which one because there's so many. And so Be the Light is actually a lyric from a song called Promise. And the lyrics go, I want you to be the light. You should be your light so that you won't be in pain and so you can smile. Now promise me several times a day, though you feel alone, don't throw yourself away. And then Jimin ends singing, Pinky, swear with me that you will do this. I love it. Anyway, and then one of the most famous songs that BTS has is called Microcosmos. And it really is this ballad about how we are all individual lights shining in a big night sky, you know, and so we are all together creating this beautiful universe. In conclusion, all right, here we go. Find people who will celebrate with you. Find people online or in real life who genuinely will celebrate your successes with you, who will be there for you. Find people who are willing to embarrass themselves with you and not take themselves so seriously. And find people who will allow you to embarrass yourself and still will be there for you. Find people who will make mistakes with you and then laugh about it. Find people who will have fun with you and who will be silly with you. And really, very importantly, find people who will express love with you. It doesn't mean a big hug in front of 50,000 people, but it needs to be people who are not afraid to show that they publicly support you. Of course, very important, find people who will be there to comfort you. And we can't all be as lucky as BTS and have them be the same people for everything, but this is where pods of support come in. Find people in all these different areas who can do this for you. And of course, don't forget to give yourself hugs too. Self-love is the root and the foundation of everything to be able to spread that gold to others. We certainly do not fall into that trap of thinking that you're isolated and separate from everyone else. That is a false narrative. And so thank you all. That's what I have prepared for you today. And it looks like we have a couple of minutes left for questions, comments, conversation, more videos. You let me know. How do I stop share? I know how to stop share. There we go. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jamie. That was so lovely. I actually was a One Direction fan, so I can relate to some of this sentiment and that phenomenon of like the cool, like the fans would always organize big charity events for the members' birthdays and things like that, and that was always like a lot of fun to participate in. This was really lovely.
Well, I hope it will bring you into the weekend with a little bit of cheer. And if you are inclined to, explore further, there are several people on here, I'm sure, who can give you links to start with, or you just start with YouTube and go down into the rabbit hole. Of course, this idea of collective joy and, and finding what resonates for you, we're all going to have different things. So it's like, do it, find it, do it with more people. Some people I know are really big fans of singing and singing in groups of people. So it's like, you know, how do you find that connection and how do you find that that feeling of togetherness where your body actually experiences the truth that you are not separate from anybody else? I think that's really important. You guys want another video? You have more questions, Todd?
Jamie, thank you so much. This was such a nice Friday afternoon kind of presentation. And I will publicly thank Jamie for getting me into BTS several months ago. They're just really fun and they bring me a lot of joy. So I hope other people can find or already have, you know, things that just bring them joy, because Lord knows we need it.
Amen. I'd like to thank Jamie for bringing BTS into the life of my daughter. It may be for good or ill, honestly, but at least she's happy with it. So I thank her for that.
You are now in an official recruitment meeting. Well, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to attend and, you know, spend time with all of us. It's really great to see your faces, many of you whom I haven't seen for a while, and it's really just, it's wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. And I think James did put the link in the chat for our next event, which I believe is coming up at the end of March. Let me double check the date on that. Yes, March 25th. John Cromer will be with us, and we would love for you to join us if you can. That'd be great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.